All right. Welcome everyone to our second LeadCon session of the summer. We are so excited to have you with us. Today we are going to be talking wellness. And so our friends from Student Wellness are here to talk a little bit more. But before we get started, I had a few housekeeping items and I will share my screen so that you can see this. We've muted everybody just to help with the recording and so that the message gets across and we don't have disruptions. We are recording this and putting it on our YouTube channel. So if you have to step out or want to revisit it or share it with a friend, you will have access to this after today. Feel free to rename yourself and introduce yourself in the chat box. The chat box is your friend to share your thoughts, give confirmation, validation, snaps. You can also add, questions in the chat box. I will be here throughout the session to monitor it in case we have issues with sound or, screen sharing, or you have questions at all. If you have something you want to share with the group, feel free to use the raise hand feature. I'm not sure if we're using breakout rooms, but if we are, when we do go into breakout rooms, if at any point throughout the day, make sure you introduce yourselves. And then last but not least, we have a survey at the very end of today's session. So make sure you stay throughout the whole session to get the link to the survey to get credit for today's session. And with that being said, I will pass it on to Jessica and Jacqueline.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it. As I mentioned, or as Leanne mentioned, if you have any comments, if you just want to participate, you're welcome to participate in the chat box. That's really helpful. I love the feedback throughout the presentation. And Jacqueline and Leanne will let me know if you all have questions, so that way I can pause. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation. All right, so I am going to share my PowerPoint that I have for you all. Let's get this going here. My computer always pauses every time I try to go from screen share to, there we go, now we're back. Okay, so today I'm talking about whole life wellness. We're going to be talking about avoiding burnout. And my name is Jessica Leone. I have a master's in science degree. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'll be working today with Jacqueline Girali. She also has a master's in science. She's a licensed professional clinical counselor, and her pronouns are she, her, hers. We work with the CAPS department. So in case y'all haven't heard of us before, we are the counseling and psychological services on campus. So today I have a few different topics that I'm going to be discussing. We're going to be talking about burnout prevention. We're going to be talking about self-care in the organization, and then mental health resources. So I'm going to jump right into it. So why is self-care important? Self-care is important because it's burnout prevention. So when stress accumulates, it can become emotionally exhausting. People who are feeling burnt out can feel it physically and psychologically. So evidence of burnout, when we feel it physically and we feel it in our bodies, we might feel low energy, we might feel headaches, we might feel changes in our sleep patterns, changes in our appetite, muscle tension and soreness. So oftentimes that happens in our shoulders, and soreness in our bodies. In our emotions, we might feel increased anxiety, panic, depression, hopelessness, doom or dread, or decreased motivation. When we are burnout, it does not discriminate as far as the areas of our life that it takes place. So you may see signs of burnout even within areas of your life that typically bring you joy, or typically you perform really well in these settings. You may also see the burnout there. So for example, you may find yourself running late to a class that you actually really like, or giving attitude or being grumpy around somebody who you love so dearly. These are small little symptoms of burnout, and that's how we know it's time to take a break. So we want to prevent the burnout. Burnout is totally preventable. So self-care is you taking care of you. More importantly, it's building habits and rituals that support your mental health. Acts of self-care should contribute to positive outcomes. So I like to pause on this and always talk about Target as an example. So if somebody's saying, I'm going to go to Target because self-care, and they go there and they end up spending a lot of money and they end up spending way too much time there, and they actually kind of use it as a form of procrastination. Well, is that really contributing to positive outcomes? So now they might feel stressed out financially because they spent way too much money. They went over budget on that, and maybe they spent way too much time. So sometimes we like to say self-care when we are treating ourselves to something, but really if we're being thoughtful about our actions, does this thing that I'm telling myself is self-care, does it actually reduce stress in my life? Or is it just me taking a break and spoiling myself? You taking a break and spoiling yourself, that's totally fine. That's okay. But don't confuse yourself when you are thinking of some of these things as self-care. So once again, acts of self-care should contribute to positive outcomes for you. Self-care. So I bring in this model. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this talks about our basic needs as human beings. So basic needs look like safety and security needs, but it also looks like nutrition and drinking water and getting rest. Our psychological needs may be having friends, having things that we, having relationships, feeling that sense of accomplishment. And then at the very top is achieving one's full potential. Sure, you can totally have poor nutrition and good relationships. It doesn't mean that you can't have some of those things in the middle or even the top of this pyramid if you haven't invested in the bottom. But what this does say is that if you're not getting your proper nutrition, you're not getting your proper rest, you're not getting enough water, those things serve as stressors. You're stressing your body out. And so focusing in on, okay, am I at least taking care of my basic needs before I'm moving up this pyramid and focusing on other things? So if you're not focusing on those bottom layers, you may notice that you have a higher level of parts of this pyramid. So self-care is more than just a bubble bath. There's so many aspects of self-care. I really like this diagram because it kind of paints that picture here. So as you can see in the teal, professional self-care. So practicing self-care when you're in a professional setting, sometimes that means learning to say no. Ooh, that's one of my favorite ones. Using your vacation time, setting boundaries, taking your full lunch break. So making sure that you're saying, no, I don't have to be productive for a full 8 hours a day. I'm going to take a lunch break, decompress, get a little bit of joy, put some nutrients in my body, maybe go for a walk, something like that, so that I can return to my work day later on feeling more energized. So physical, that can include regular medical care. That can include getting a massage, physical intimacy, like hugs or holding hands. Psychological is taking time for reflection, maybe therapy, meditation, keeping a journal. So thinking about ways if you are always on the go, how can I get just a little bit of time to myself where I'm just by myself with my thoughts? And that doesn't necessarily have to look like a bubble bath. Sometimes that can be, I'm going to play my music in the car and I'm going to sing as loud as I can because it feels really good to let that energy out. And that's time for me to express myself.
Jessica?
So, yes, absolutely. You got a question?
We have a question in the chat. What if the message that a person has heard about self-care is that it's selfish and can be put on the back burner after taking care of other tasks?
Yeah, that is something that's pretty common in our society. And What's interesting, I guess it really depends on where that message is coming from. I think that is something that within American society, there's a lot of value on your grind, your hustle. If you work hard, then that's where your value comes from. There's a lot of value placed on money compared to value placed on these areas of health. And so, first of all, I guess it'd be interesting to explore where that message is coming from. Is that coming from, and it can be coming from a variety of places, even within family culture as well. If you're in survival mode and you don't have the opportunity to take a break, then, or maybe some people in your family didn't grow up with the opportunity to take a break, then yeah, that would make sense why that message is communicated. And so communicating your needs and communicating boundaries as well is really important. And encouraging others to do the same. And I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But if it's coming from the organization that you belong to, that can be a values conflict. So if you value your own health, if you value your own mental health, and the organization is saying, no, you don't get to care about your health and your mental health. You only get to care about your role in the organization. That may be something for you to notice, and that may be something for you to decide how you can navigate that. So sometimes you can establish boundaries within your relationships or within organizations. Other times, maybe okay, I can do this short term, but this is not going to last long term. And noticing that dynamic. I hope I kind of answered your question with that.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
So there's also, thanks Jacqueline for letting me know about the chat. I appreciate your help. When it comes to self-care, there's also spiritual aspects to it as well. So volunteering, practicing forgiveness, spending time in nature, things like that can help people connect with a deeper part of themselves, or a deeper meaning to and purpose to their lives or to others, to this world, whatever that may mean for them. And then personal, so setting goals for yourself that are separate from the organization's goals. Or I have goals for class because I need to pass my classes, but I also want to have goals for myself, for joy, for things that are maybe learning a new skill, reading a book, making time for friends, reflecting, things like that. So when we look at this, that looks like a lot of things to add to your life. That's not what I'm saying at all. These are just ideas that if you're noticing, wow, I'm actually kind of missing some spiritual self-care. Here's some ideas. That's what I'm hoping that you're going to gain from this, is knowing that self-care is more than just a bubble bath. Self-care can be a variety of different things. And you don't have to do all of the things all of the time. You might notice that some of these items of self-care really work for you for a good 6 weeks, and then that's not really working so much anymore. So I'm going to move on to other things. It's okay to kind of shuffle around this wheel and get what you need when you need it. These are just ideas to help you to notice a sense of balance that could happen. So self-care isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less and simplifying. Remember how I said, under that professional side of this model, learning to say no is sometimes the hardest thing you can do, but sometimes one of the most important things you can do for yourself as far as self-care goes. So sometimes it's not about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less and simplifying. So I have this diagram here in the yellow circle. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, or maybe you just want to take a picture of this on your phone, sometimes this is helpful to just assess what's going on for you. So actions are things that refuel your energy. And then in the gray box outside is actions and things that deplete your energy. And you can use this diagram on a large scale. So you can say, what are the actions or things that refuel my energy in life in general? And make a list of those things and things that deplete you. All right, let's put those in there too. Or you can do it for a certain circumstance. So I'm trying to study, I can't concentrate. What are things that refuel my energy when I study, and what are things that deplete my energy when I study? So for example, things that refuel me when I'm studying or needing to focus, I like to have a space where I hear a little bit of noise, but I am kind of far away from somebody because I'm easily distractible, and I distract other people too. So that's something that's helpful is I like noise, I don't like silence, but I also, things that deplete me are when people are sitting right next to me. Things that also deplete me when I'm trying to study is my phone, picking it up all the time and texting people or people texting me, or just disengaging from my study habits and scrolling on Instagram or whatever I'm doing. And so if I sit down, I use this diagram before I want to study, for example, I know this is kind of like it helps me to create a study plan. On a larger scale, you can use this, like I said, in your life in general. So things that refuel your energy. What are things that bring you joy? What are things that bring you happiness? And then what are things that don't? And some of the things that deplete our energy, there's nothing we can do about it. There's things like financial burdens or relationships that there's a lot of conflict in there and they just exist. Some of the things that are in that gray zone, you can't just kick out of your life. It's not that simple. That's not how life is where we live our lives without stress. But what we want to see is that the things that fill that yellow zone, that the yellow circle is quite big compared to the gray square. So if you're filling this in and you're like, whoa, I need to take space away from the yellow zone because I don't have enough problems, or I don't have enough space for my stressors on this diagram. I have too many things in my stressors area and not enough things in my joy area. That's something to assess for yourself. So some stressors in life we can't control, but if we have this much stress, let's bring up this much self-care. So I don't know if you can necessarily, I'm realizing that I'm sharing my screen, so you're looking at my PowerPoint and not my hands. I talk with my hands a lot. So what I was saying is that maybe you have quite a bit of stress in your life. You also need to add quite a bit of stress, self-care in there as well. Making it equivalent, making it so that you are able to bounce back from stressors. And that's way easier said than done. Today I'm providing you a lot of information about self-care, and everybody's journey of self-care is different. And it is a journey because as you go through life, you will need to adjust your self-care plan. Like I mentioned, maybe going for a walk and journaling used to work for you, but now that doesn't work. Now you need to put on really angry music and scream in your car. That's good. Okay, now let's adjust that plan. But just always thinking about ways to support yourself. And oftentimes having these actions or things that refuel your energy. Having a list of them seems kind of silly when you're sitting down right now. You're like, why do I need a list of things that bring me joy? I know those things. You know that now, but if you're really stressed out, it may be really hard to recall. So that's why it's helpful to have a plan. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. So self-care is checking in with yourself. It's adding positive activities. It's finding some balance. So if you have a lot of stressors in your life, finding ways that you can care for yourself. And sometimes that just means meeting your basic needs. If you are so busy that you are not getting proper nutrition or drinking enough water, just start there. Little steps really do help. Setting boundaries. So that means saying no. That means advocating for yourself and advocating for your health and your mental well-being. Asking for help is also a form of self-care. Knowing your capacity. So we all have only so much energy in the day. And so knowing what you are able to handle, what's on your plate, is really important. So you're not overloading yourself and taking things on. So that's a part of setting boundaries too, is saying, you know what, I only have this much energy, so I'm only going to get that much stuff done today. I'm not going to add a bunch of stuff on my plate, and I'm going to find ways to seek more energy or to seek more positivity, to add more energy if you're at low capacity. And self-care is a skill to be practiced. So like I mentioned, this is a journey of self-care that you are learning now and you will carry through your career. So getting to know yourself. How do you know when it's time to increase your self-care? So I actually developed this for myself when I was in a very, very stressful work environment. And I noticed that I was burning out once every 3 months. So once every 3 months, I was having an emotional breakdown of some kind. And I was just burning out completely. So a lot of those symptoms that we saw in that first slide, yep, that was me. And it was happening really often. So I developed this system to help me to just be a little bit more mindful of when the stress level was rising. And so I had a plan. So get to know yourself. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We have a question in the chat. How can we not give in if people guilt trip your journey to self-care because it doesn't include them?
Okay. I'm wondering if this question has to do with like setting boundaries, like not including somebody in your journey as if like you don't want them in your life anymore, or not including them in your journey like you are just doing things that they don't want you to do. I guess those are two different circumstances. You're welcome to clarify, but if you don't want to clarify, then that's okay. I can kind of speak to both. Sometimes if your relationships, or if you are in a relationship that is particularly unhealthy or toxic for you, and unhelpful for your level of self-care, sometimes that does mean distancing yourself from that relationship, or changing the relationship. It doesn't always have to mean kicking people out of your life. That's not, in some regards it might, but that's not always the answer. It just might mean adjusting how that relationship functions in your life. Advocating for your needs does take practice. I see a little bit in the chat box, Jacqueline.
Yeah, so there was additional information. So as if we are doing things they don't want us to do because it's good for us, but not for them.
Yeah. I think it would depend on who this person is. Like if it's and please don't feel like you have to specify. I want you to still have your privacy if that's important. You know, if this is somebody who you're just a friend, that's an interesting friend dynamic. I would hope that,
yeah, it's a friend, it looks like.
Okay. That's clarifying that I am my best and I have more energy when I'm able to take care of myself. And so if this is a friendship that you want to have and maintain, but maybe that person just requires a lot more energy from you, setting that boundary of, hey, I can be a lot more present for you. I enjoy our time a lot more together when I am rested. When I am really stressed out, I'm not the best friend I can possibly be in the moment. I am not the best version of myself because I have too much happening. So I need to take some time to myself and make sure that I am decompressing and de-stressing. So that way I can be present for you. Being present means being in the moment. I can be with you and not be distracted by all these stressors that I have going on. If this is a person who particularly reaches out to you to vent their personal problems, that may be something, and that's particularly draining to you, and that's what you're needing to set a boundary with. You can always guide them towards resources, especially if they're a student. You can always guide them to mental health resources. Not everybody needs therapy, but there are resources that we're going to talk about later. You can also help them to, you can say things like, hey, you got this. Like, what I do is when I have a lot of thoughts on my mind is I write them down, or helping them to realize that they may have a broader support system and it doesn't fall all on you. I think that's a part of the reassurance that is important to give ourselves, is that, okay, well, our friend is also a grown adult, and their mental well-being is not my responsibility, that their mental well-being is their responsibility. And look at all these resources that they have. They also go to Cal State Fullerton and they have these mental health resources. They may have other friends, they may have family, they may have websites that they can look at or podcasts that they can view. Reassuring ourselves sometimes that we are not the ones to solve our friends' problems can be really helpful, especially when it comes to self-care and boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. There's a question that came in, but I think you answered it, but you might want to provide more info. Another person wrote, I second that question that you just were addressing. Adding on my situation, it is a client.
Okay, so adding on to the situation, it's a client. So when I think of client, I think of something for work. And so setting a boundary with providing people, if it has to do with work, and they are your client, setting a boundary with, hey, these are the resources that you can use. That calling me, I'm not your only resource. Here's some websites that you can look at. Here's some other people that you can also inquire information from, or acquire information from, things like that. As far as clients go, I know that word, like I said, I think of a professional setting, reaching out to colleagues too and asking them like, hey, this client's texting me at 10 o'clock at night. Like, what's the norm here in this role? And also setting boundaries with people. For example, if you do have a client texting you at 10 o'clock at night, or somebody within your organization texting you at 10 o'clock at night, asking you for things, and that's your downtime, letting them know, don't respond until business hours, and letting them know, hi, I'm only available during these hours for you to ask me questions. After that, I'll have to return your call or return your text the next business day. And that is for you to hold that boundary as far as time goes is important. So if you text them back and you say, hey, I'm not going to talk to you after 8 o'clock, but you are texting them back and engaging, then that, unfortunately, you need to work on that boundary and holding that. If you say you're not available, really truly be available. I know that feels so uncomfortable, but holding your boundary and sticking to it and letting that other person adjust, and getting used to that boundary is allowing them the opportunity to test out that is important.
Thank you.
Okay, so getting to know yourself. I, especially for leaders, when I think of a student leader, I think of somebody who has so much on their plate. And so I really do encourage each of you to try to create a system for yourself like this, what I have on the screen. So what I made is, in my green zone, it says, what does your life look like when your stress levels feel manageable? I know for me, when my stress levels feel manageable, I'm able to show up to things on time or early. I walk in calm. I don't have tension in my shoulders. I feel like my work and all my stuff feels pretty manageable. Like, I've got this. I don't have any fears about what if it doesn't work out. I'm just simply going through my day. I feel happy. Well, actually, not all the time, right? Because a lack of stress doesn't always mean happiness, but I don't feel that tension in my body. When stress starts to bump up and I'm in that yellow zone, I start to be a little less prepared for my meetings that I'm showing up to, or I might be doing my assignments later and later in the evening at night. I might be getting a little snappy with my friends or family. I might notice changes in my sleep. I might notice changes in my appetite. So I'm suddenly craving really fatty foods, or I'm suddenly craving like dessert in the middle of the night, things like that. Changes in your appetite, changes in your sleep are really big indicators within this yellow zone. And then your red zone, that is your burnout zone. So what does your life look like when stress is too much? So when your stress is too much, this is your burnout. This is when you are depleted. This is when you do not have anything left in your tank. So what does your life look like? Maybe you're crying often. Maybe you are easily overwhelmed. Maybe you're angry. Maybe you are resentful. Anger and resentful are very similar. Maybe you're not sleeping hardly any, like maybe you're getting 3 hours of sleep. You may be having panic attacks. You may be really, really anxious. So that's your red zone. So if you design a program like this where you get to know yourself, you can look for the symptoms and catch it before it gets to that red zone. So if you catch your stress when you start noticing, oh, I'm in that yellow zone, you can add the self-care so that way you don't have to get to the red zone. So the next part of this is, okay, when you're in the green zone, what self-care do you need at this level? Maybe self-care looks like trying out new versions of self-care. Maybe self-care looks like maintaining what you're already doing. And then when you're in the yellow zone, the stress rises. What self-care do you need to add? So, okay, I was getting by with packing my lunch and refilling my water, engaging in my friendships, but now the stress is building up and I think I need to add journaling. I think I need to add, I need to start working out. Or I need to add another day or another walk during my lunch break. I need to make sure I'm not working on my lunch break. And then the red zone is, what are things that you can help yourself get out of the red zone? So the red zone, your goal is to get out of there. So what do you need to do? This is urgent because your body really is feeling depleted. So how do you get yourself out of the red zone? And that may mean taking a break from whatever you are doing. That's putting the brakes on. And I go into that a little bit in here. So in your green plan, design a plan that works for you. So, okay, in order to keep myself in the green zone, I want to make sure I'm getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. I like to pack my lunch the night before. I like to make sure I have toilet paper in my house and gas in my car. I like to make sure I'm going on walks between my classes, that if I have some downtime, maybe I'll learn something new, like attending a mental health presentation, something like that. Okay, that was my plug for, I want y'all to attend workshops and mental health presentations. Okay, so next is the yellow level. These are examples of ways that you can bump up your self-care. So, okay, at this point, maybe for me, I'm not trusted to have my phone in the room with me when I'm trying to focus or concentrate. This may be when you need to exit some windows out on your browser so that way you can make sure that you have room to focus. Maybe you're letting your friends and family know that you need time to focus. So maybe you're saying, hey, I have some big presentations coming up, or hey, just to let you know, like you may see me kind of timing out a little bit. Like I may not be quick to respond to your text messages, and it's because I have some big things coming up and I need to focus. So letting them know ahead of time, communicating that to them is a part of setting boundaries. You're not just suddenly disappearing and they don't know where you are or what's going on. You are communicating, hey, I need to focus, I'm really busy, this is what's going on. Using your weekends to rest. When you're in the yellow zone, remember this is burnout prevention. So if you are working all week or you're busy all week long, and then you have maybe a Saturday coming up that you don't have plans, let's keep it that way. You actually do have plans, and your plan is to rest. So treating your self-care as if it is an item in your calendar to honor, like it is an appointment that you have that you cannot cancel. So somebody says, oh, hey, what are you doing this Saturday? And in your mind, you're like, oh, I don't have anything, but I'm so tired. That's okay to say, you know what, I need to rest this weekend. Or you can say, I have plans. And once again, you're not lying. Your plan is to rest. Your plan is to make sure that you're making time for yourself. You can even plug in items of self-care onto your calendar, put it into your schedule so that way you remember to do it. Once again, treat it like it's an appointment with yourself that cannot be canceled. It's just as important as an appointment with your boss. That sentence was wild for me to say. So maybe less TV and more journaling, listening to music, getting in touch with things that make you feel joy. So, okay, yes, TV is nice because you just get to like stare off and just be entertained. But maybe there's music within your playlist that actually brings you back to some positive memories or makes you feel relaxed. Let's try the music instead. You can also see a therapist at this point. So if you're feeling like you want to do some burnout prevention, you can see a therapist, you can attend a group, you can utilize some resources that you have. Okay, so when you're on the red level, examples to get out of the red zone. Once again, when you're in this zone, your goal is to get out of this zone. So ask for help. So at this point, you're texting a friend who's really good at listening, or you're calling your cousin who can help you get organized. You're setting an appointment with your therapist. So you're needing a break. You are physically and emotionally depleted and exhausted. So, okay, I need to take a break. I'm at the point where I cannot keep going or else it's going to really be detrimental. So I need to take a break. Can I use a sick day at work? Are there things in my calendar that I can reschedule? So are there things that can be placed later on that's not so pressing? Can you go to bed early? Can you take some vitamins? And I put clean my house. So one of my red zone items is to clean. I noticed that when I am really stressed out, I'm not as good about doing like daily chores. So really quickly, my car and my house, they get kind of cluttered. I mean, they don't get like gross. They just like things need to be put away. And so sometimes doing something as simple as, you know what, I'm going to clean my house. So that way I feel like my environment is refreshed. And I also feel like I can do something about my stress. So remember, in this red zone, you might be feeling hopeless. You might be feeling so overwhelmed that sometimes doing things that are in our control can make things feel less out of our control. So sometimes slowing it down and saying, I'm going to just take 1 hour to clean my space, that can make you feel like you're taking an active step towards decompressing and reducing some stress around you. Like, hey, I got a lot of stressors going on, but at least I was able to get one thing off my list. Taking small steps towards decluttering or reducing that stress level, anything helps. So setting yourself up for success. Some stressors are predictable or avoidable. Note that some things may be in your schedule. I don't know what my sentence was trying to say. Some of those things, basically, if you can schedule in your self-care, it can help you to prepare for some of these instances. So we know that every semester there's a final season, there's midterms. Schedules get really busy around October, November, December. So if you know that this is coming up, let's plan that self-care. Let's say, okay, in August and September, I'm in the green zone, I'm feeling good. I'm going to set myself up with a lot of self-care so I'm in a nice, good routine. So that way when October, November, December hits, I already am packing my lunch every day and drinking my water, and I'm already journaling or doing things. So some things in our lives some stressors are predictable. And so leaving yourself room for that can be really helpful. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to the next topic. I'm curious to know if there's any questions at this point where we're at.
No, we're good for now.
Okay, great, thank you. So we had some questions earlier about self-care and advocating for yourself. And so I wanted to, especially since you all are student leaders, I wanted to talk about self-care in the organization. So how to cultivate a culture that supports a healthy well-being. So creating a culture within an organization that allows for all members to take care of themselves is proactive and allows for greater longevity and satisfaction within participation. So there's a great argument right there is, hey, if we allow ourselves, not just me as a person, but I want to practice self-care, but I also want you to practice self-care. I want us all members to feel like we are taking good care of our well-being. So earlier there was a question about, hey, what's a good thing to say? This is a great argument right here, is that if we're all taking care of ourselves collectively, we are all healthier and can support each other in that. So greater longevity and satisfaction within participation. People are able to practice what they need to practice in their self-care. So if you are a leader, elements to include within your leadership include delegating, leading by example, and then considering member morale. So when I mentioned delegating, I'm sure you all have heard this term, but just in case, I'll dive into it for just a second. So basically delegating means as a leader, you have a list of things that you are responsible for. Delegating means spreading out some of those responsibilities and using a team or a committee to help you with getting some of those things done. So reasons to use delegating is that it reduces resentment and burnout amongst leaders. If you have 100 members in your organization and only 5 leaders are doing all of the work, those leaders are going to be resentful and they're going to be burnt out. Not only that, but maybe somebody who's wanting to lead in the future, they're like, hey, I'm a really good leader, but I don't know, I don't really want to lead in this organization because look at the president right now, they're really, really burnt out. That may be deterring other people from stepping up. So delegating reduces resentment and resentment too. So that way the leaders aren't feeling like everything is on their shoulders. And that way they can pass along some responsibilities. Resentment, feeling anger towards other people. You don't want to feel angry towards your members. Forming committees and dividing tasks, that's delegating. Communicating realistic goals and expectations. So not only when you form this team, when you have your committee, not just saying, hey, can you just be here to help? That's really vague. What does that mean? You're setting yourself up for failure there. So making sure to have goals for them that you want them to help you with and communicating those expectations. So, hey, I want you to help me with this event. What I need you to do is I want you to be in charge of specifically doing this list of things. And let me know if you're not able to do that. And we can also get you help too. So you can teach people who you are delegating to, you can teach them to delegate as well. Those people are also allowed to have committees. Think about large corporations. It's not the CEO that's doing all the work. There's so many people in the organization doing a part of the task.
Thank you.
It really,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jessica. We have a couple questions coming in. What if you have a hard time delegating because you like things done a certain way?
Sure. So what I encourage you to do is to really, really sit with yourself and ask if whatever you want done a certain way is more important than the detriment that it takes on your mental health. So say you want things done a certain way and you want it done perfectly, and that doesn't bother you, it doesn't stress you out to have that on your shoulders, well, then it's not a big deal. But if you want things done a certain way, and because you want things done a certain way, you have way too much on your shoulders, and therefore you're really stressed out, well, it seems like that's not really working out for you. And so sitting with yourself and really exploring with curiosity, without judgment, right? Like, I'm assuming that if you're, maybe the type of person that you want things done a certain way, you probably have that's worked for you in some capacity for a while. But maybe at the point of where you are in your leadership, maybe you are taking on a bigger role. And so maybe that way of being worked for you when you were in a smaller role, but now it's not going to. And so that may be a part of your growth as a leader, that as I keep working my way up this ladder, I know I'm going to have to trust in my team. And that's my next bullet point, is trusting in your team that with the tasks at hand. So picking people who you believe in, and also communicating those expectations and goals, making sure that they're realistic. You can help to set your team up for success. It doesn't mean that you're saying, hey, you do this project and you're just dumping it on them. But it also doesn't mean that you're micromanaging them, because you micromanaging them that takes a lot of energy too. And so looking at how important is this outcome. So yeah, that didn't get done the exact way I would have wanted it to, but did we still get the outcome that I wanted to have? So sure, that person's PowerPoint's layout isn't what I like, but is that person still communicating what needs to be communicated? Does the audience still receive the information? Yep, perfect. Or maybe that's not the aesthetic that we're going for. Okay, if there are little things that need to be adjusted. So if it's a thing about, say you're planning for an event and somebody is making, I don't know, decorations or something like that, that's not going, making sure to set up time so that way you have time to collaborate and work as a team. So if you're delegating to people, making sure to set up time to meet with them and make sure you're on the same page. Cultivate a relationship that allows for feedback and collaboration as well. So if you're putting way too much on their plate, or if they're not following through, being curious about that and asking, hey, like, what are things that you need so that you can get this job done? So that's providing resources for them to get the job done as well. We want to make sure that we're setting up our team for success. So if you have a specific vision, making sure to communicate that specific vision, and ultimately learning to trust in the team, and learning to practice engaging in some thoughts about things don't have to be perfect, can be really helpful.
Thank you, Jessica. It sounds like really looking at the value and importance of having an open dialogue and communication, as well as really investing time in being able to really do some self-reflection. A couple of other comments we have. These are amazing and very helpful tips. Thank you. Another comment, yes, I can relate to this from what I see at work. It's sad how visible it is when someone is burned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. It is sad witnessing somebody be burnt out, and it's sad yourself when you're burnt out because your joy is taken away. You're seeing somebody who may have been really passionate about their role, and now they're not passionate anymore. They're actually burdened by it. And so within an organization, if your organization is set up so that it allows and encourages people to engage in self-care, it's the norm to have boundaries. It's the norm to seek joy. It's the norm to want to decompress and not be stressed out. That can really be helpful. In terms of delegating too, I wanted to say is when you're communicating these things, these tasks to other people, watching your tone too. Not everything has to have a harsh deadline, or not everything has to be perfect. Not everything has to be stressful. And so watching the way that you communicate, you can have very clear expectations and very clear deadlines, but making sure to have some flexibility for other people's ideas, making sure to have flexibility for people to make mistakes. It's okay that we're not all perfect. And sometimes that perfectionism, when we have somebody who's leading us and they're quite a perfectionist, that can actually cause a lot of stress. Like I'm afraid to make a mistake because this person who's leading me is really tense and there's no room for error. So within your leadership, making room for error, having a plan A, this is what I want it to look like, but also having a plan B, if it's okay that it looks like plan B as well. Let's plan for it to go really well, but also let's plan for it to not go really well too. Leading by example. So demonstrating your self-care to others gives permission to do the same. So if you're a leader and you are, I had a really great weekend. I spent time with my friends and my family, versus, oh, I had a good weekend. I worked all weekend. I answered emails all weekend. Well, that doesn't necessarily convey an environment of self-care. So making sure that you are minding your boundaries, leading by example. Once again, it's proactive instead of reactive. If you have these systems built into place, if you're thinking, if you make time to do all of your projects and it's, you allow for some errors, some flexibility within that, then you're not scrambling and you're not reacting to stress, you're getting ahead of the stress. So maybe if you find yourself being a little bit of a perfectionist within your leadership, asking yourself, is this project realistic? Do I actually have time? Do I and my team, do we have time to get this project done within this time frame? Without having to pull all-nighters, gluing stuff on, or without having to pull all-nighters, organizing playlists or seating charts or pulling together PowerPoints. How do we fit what we need to do within our given time frame? How do we work smarter, not harder? So building on past projects instead of reinventing the wheel. So this allows others to feel motivated to join or participate in leadership, like I mentioned earlier. So an example is, I want to take on a leadership role, but I don't want to be stressed out like that person. So yeah, somebody commented, seeing somebody else burnt out is so sad. And it is. That is another reason why taking care of yourself, you're really not only taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of the organization too. So member morale. So appreciation and relationships go a long way. So there's actually a lot of research on this that relationships are very, very important. Remember that triangle or that pyramid that I showed you in one of the first slides, that relationships was on there. So basic needs for human beings, we need relationships. And a part of that is feeling successful, feeling accomplished at our tasks. So a part of your delegating that you're doing, appreciating and showing people that you see their hard work is very, very important. It doesn't take much energy to be polite. So pleases and thank yous, saying, recognizing people's strengths is really, really important. I can think of times that my boss's boss's boss said something nice about the work that I did, and that gave me a little boost of energy. And so thinking about that, relationships go a long way. And so if you have a really high paying job, but a terrible boss, that still sounds really stressful. And sometimes people will choose to work maybe at a job that doesn't have as many benefits because their boss is that awesome and it's more of a mentor type relationship. Respect and boundaries. So if you want your boundaries respected, you need to respect other people's boundaries too. So if you are a leader and say you're a night owl and you just happen to get stuff done late at night, communicating, hey, I'm going to be sending you emails late at night, but I understand that you're a human and you require sleep. You do not have to respond to my emails. That's not an expectation at all. For the most part, if you can avoid communicating to people or putting things onto their plates during inappropriate hours, don't text people at 1 a.m. about something that's happening 2 days later. Just respecting that people also need time to decompress. People need time with themselves, their families. They need time to sleep. And looking at values and missions. So sure, it would be really cool to have this really awesome event, but why are we having this really awesome event if we are so stressed out that the wheels are falling off this wagon? So values and mission, if you have a mission statement or a values outline with your organization, going back to that. So why are we doing what we're doing? Is it worth the stress that we're doing? How can we get there? How can we honor our mission or honor our values without overstepping the line with self-care? Some organizations can become toxic when they use its members as resources to deplete. So what I meant by this is that if the organization starts overtly or covertly communicating that the organization and the tasks at hand are way more important than the health and well-being of the members itself, then that can become an unhealthy dynamic for you to be in. So if you are leading an organization like this, I encourage you to consider how your members' self-care and well-being does matter. Once again, if we're all taking care of ourselves, we're actually doing the organization a favor. If you are a part of an organization like this, considering how long are you willing to participate in this? So sometimes that's a part of your hustle, right? Like sometimes you're like, hey, I know this isn't working for me, but I just need to put in a good year and a half and then I'm done with this. Making sure to just kind of have a boundary or a deadline or something like that, and measuring how much of your energy are you able to use while participating in this organization. And then member morale is also about everybody has something to bring to the table. So find what people are hoping for to get out of their time in the organization and fill that need. So maybe somebody just wants to, maybe this is a student organization and somebody's just joining because they're just hoping to build their network or build their friendships. Thinking of how you can increase their experience of friendships or networking within the tasks that you're hoping that they can bring to the table.
Thank you, Jessica. There's a comment from a leader. I wanted to throw out, as a person who has taken a lot for a while already, that one thing that helps me reduce stress is taking 5 to 10 minutes throughout the day to do small stretches and exercises. It really makes a huge difference.
I love that. Yeah. So thinking back to that wheel that I had in one of the first slides, it's not about doing these huge tasks that take a long time. Self-care doesn't have to take a long time. Self-care can be little, almost like you can get like snacks of self-care, right? So you can do little bits of self-care throughout your day that can be really helpful. I know me stepping out and getting some sunlight is really helpful. And it doesn't take much. I just need a little bit. I need some fresh air. Nature is very rejuvenating for me. So that's something that I do. And it doesn't take that long, and it really does make a world of difference. So thank you for communicating that, because it doesn't have to be big acts of self-care to be self-care. So long-term care, self-care within organizations, I encourage you as a person to develop your own mission statement based off of your own personal values. So similarly to how organizations and companies, they have a mission statement. So why are they here? What do they stand for? Thinking about how you can develop a mission statement for yourself as well can be helpful for when you're making decisions about the type of leader you want to be or the type of organizations you want to participate in. So for example, my personal mission statement involves my personal well-being. I also appreciate my education. I like to feel like my voice is being heard. So when I am navigating, when I'm navigating choices within my career, thinking about how do I stand true to myself? Will this new thing that I'm taking on help me to live out my mission statement? And so that can always be helpful, especially if you're a young leader and you're in the habit of saying yes to everything, yes to every opportunity because you have a hustle and you are really, you're going for it. Sometimes we can get in the habit of saying yes. And so pausing before you say yes and really assessing, do I have the capacity for this? Does this help me further my personal mission statement and values? Is really important. The next point is weighing your pros and cons of your hustle. So, if you have a lot going on, like if you are a student leader and you're taking full-time units in class, and then you have a job as well, and then somebody says, hey, can you take this on too? Weighing the pros and cons of that. What does that mean? Do I have the space for it? And how is my hustle working for me? So I am working so hard, but are you spinning your wheels in the mud, working really hard? You're just essentially exhausting yourself? Or is your hustle taking you places and you're going somewhere with it? There's an article on you at Fullerton. I think it's called Addicted to Stress. It's kind of interesting because it talks about how sometimes we're so used to life being stressful that we forget to have an identity and a life outside of stress. Like, I'm a hustler. This is what I do. I'm always busy. I'm always stressed out. I just live my life fast paced. And so I do encourage you to consider, what would your life be like if you didn't have that much stress, or if you weren't moving at such a fast pace? What is this fast paced, high stress lifestyle doing for your well-being? So yeah, I live a very fast-paced life, but I'm also really depleted, and I, get upset often, and I'm unhappy most of the time. That's when you're weighing the pros and cons. Setting boundaries for yourself from the beginning at a new role. So say you're starting a brand new position, whether it's a new job or a new role within your organization, making sure your boundaries are there. So if you are at a job and they say, hey, your salary, this is a 40-hour week job, but you take it upon yourself to work 50 or 60 hours a week, guess what you just communicated to your employer? That you can handle working 50 or 60 hours a week. And so when you go to dial back on that, oh, now I need self-care, then that might be kind of confusing to them. They might think that, well, you're able to do this, so I'm just going to keep piling on the work. And so if you're, looking at the structure of your job or the organization, how much work am I agreeing to take on? And how can I have boundaries around this? How do I keep my boundaries from the start is really important. If this is a role that's saying, hey, this is going to be a 50, 60-hour week job, once again, go back to that one of those first points. What's the pros and cons of my hustle? Am I spinning my wheels in the mud, or is this hustle, what I'm about to invest in, all this energy I'll be exerting, is it going to be worth it? Does it support my mission and values? And then another question to ask is this place compatible with my leadership style? So if you are the type of person who is used to taking on a leadership role everywhere you go, not everywhere that you go is compatible with your leadership style. And so once again, thinking about, is this a role that I'm just gonna, kind of participate and I'm gonna be a team player, or is this a role that my leadership style really fits within? So maybe you get hired at a company and you're somebody who's always full of ideas and creativity and you want to push that envelope, you just want to try new things, but the organization doesn't really value that. They value consistency. They value more of erring on the side of caution. Then that may not be a place that you want to take yourself to that place of leadership within. So just kind of being curious about what types of environments you are pouring yourself into and what types of environments your energy is valued within. Okay, how are we doing with the chat so far?
We're good.
All righty. So I want you all to know, as student leaders at Cal State Fullerton, you all don't have to have the answers. So I know that oftentimes when in leadership positions in student organizations, you're often leading your friends. And so you may see other people burning out. You may see stress levels really high. You may be seeing people, life sometimes, can get tough. Life isn't always easy. And so what I want to let you know is that you don't have, just because you're a leader within the organization, you don't have to take on everybody else's problems. That is not your responsibility. Everybody is responsible for their own mental health and well-being. You can, however, be a resource to point them in the right direction. So saying, hey, I think this might be helpful for you. Why don't you check this out? So I want to make you aware of CAPS services. Once again, CAPS stands for Counseling and Psychological Services. A lot of people think that CAPS is just individual therapy. Hey, if you need a therapist on campus, go see CAPS. And sure, that might be true in some regards, but there's a lot of other things that we do. So our website and our social media, at the very bottom of this tier, we like to think of this as a tiered, like a step system or like a menu of our services. So using our CAPS website or our social media, we have journaling ideas on there. We have at-home art activities on there. If you just explore that, that's a good way for somebody to engage in self-help. There's lots, we did like a summer reading list this summer. We try to post multiple times a week about information that may benefit students, just to educate them on mental health. You at Fullerton is a wellness platform that Jacqueline's going to tell us about in just a few minutes. We also have our peer mental wellness team. So we have students who are hired onto our staff who are here to help Cal State Fullerton feel comfortable with talking about mental health. So reducing the stigma on campus. We also have wellness workshops. Wellness workshops are almost like presentations that you can just kind of drop into. So say you want to learn about sleep, you want to learn about reducing stress, you want to learn about thoughts. Think of these wellness workshops as skill-based. All of them are listed on our website. We have drop-in groups. So drop-in groups are groups of, it's usually like 2 to 10 students would be in this group with you. And there would be a counselor as well. It's kind of like drop-in, like at the student rec center. You can just come and get what you need out of the class or out of the group, and there's no RSVP or there's no like commitment. We are doing RSVP on type link though. We have wellness coaching, we have case management. So if you're needing help with getting services off campus, case manager can help you with that. Wellness coaching is kind of like a single session. So somebody, I always use the example of, so maybe somebody's going through a breakup and they just need just one session to just kind of vent and talk about that, gain some skills on how they can be more resilient to work through that. A wellness coach could be helpful for that. Group therapy, it's a great way to connect with other students on a similar topic. So one of our most popular groups is a grief group. So for students who are experiencing grief and loss of a loved one, people gather together to talk about that. And that of course has a counselor for those groups. They do have a pre-screening process. We want to make sure that people who are in the group are going to get what they need out of the group. So we meet with them first to make sure that that's communicated. Individual therapy, like I said, there's definitely that we offer. Most students use about 4 to 6 individual therapy sessions within an academic year, but we can offer up to 10 sessions depending on the person's need. There's psychiatric services as well and crisis services. Crisis services, we're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 by calling our number for crisis support.
A few came in here, Jessica. Last year they hosted, that mentions that CAPS hosted a book group therapy option. And it was super fun and helpful and created a new hobby. That's awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing. Another question is, do CAPS therapy services fill up quickly? If I wanted to make an appointment right now, would there be only slots available months from now because it's been booked up?
No, so it really depends on the time of year as far as how quickly we are booked up. I think the longest that I've heard is our calendar's full, I think 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And that tends to happen later in the semester. So later in the semester, when everybody's stressed out, everybody's calling to get a therapist. Yeah, it does make it difficult for scheduling. However, earlier in the semester, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. We've relocated to Titan Hall, which is a building right behind the TSU. So it's right near Troy High School. So if you use the crosswalk at the intersection of Dorothy Lane and State College, that's where you can find us. Services will be happening in person there starting the first week of school.
Thanks. A few more questions. Is CAPS therapy free? And also a few years ago, I tried to get an appointment. I couldn't get one. They were booked through the semester and I couldn't afford a therapist at the time. So I could take that second question. So I think in the past, the system was a little bit different, but as a result of the need, it was changed. And so appointments are booked up to 2 weeks. So I'd recommend, if you aren't able to get an appointment, to call back in the morning to be able to try to get an appointment. That seems to have been able to clear up the calendar in terms of appointment options. And then the therapy fee, I'm imagining Jessica will cover.
Yeah, so the services covered, the services within the steps that I covered here, these services are included within your student health fee. The only thing that's not covered is if you get medication through psychiatry services. The medication is not free, but it is offered at a reduced cost. The other costs are if you no-show an appointment or if you're late to an appointment past 10 minutes, there is a fee that is placed on your account. But other than that, all of this stuff is included within your student health fee, so you've already paid for it. So Jacqueline's going to talk briefly. I know we have a few minutes. We only have, about 15 minutes left, which is plenty of time for her to talk about You, which is our student wellness platform. We have just a few more slides to share about that. I want to make sure that you as student leaders are aware that this resource is here. So once again, you can share it with other students so you know that you don't have to have all the answers. You can point them in the direction of using this resource. So take it away, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Jessica. I just dropped into the chat our Instagram accounts for CAPS as well as You, which I'm super excited to share with you all about. So Jessica mentioned earlier, You is an online wellness platform and it's designed for students. So it's specifically built for student use and essentially has articles, videos that have been curated for students with the understanding that students are very busy, have a lot on their plates. And so they're really designated to be able to meet the needs of students, which I'll go over in a few more slides here. So if I can have the next slide, please. So what you'll do is go to u.fullerton.edu, which I dropped into the chat in order to be able to access this service. And it's really looking at this as a wellness, a well-being platform or portal, and really looking at how to thrive, succeed, and matter. So it has different holistic options for students. So it provides resources for mental health, for academics, as well as professional. And you can find resources to support physical health, well-being. It has a very holistic approach, and it's specific and customized for the student's needs. So a couple of different options here. It can help you with navigating relationships. I've heard of students that have had some challenges in romantic relationships, and as a result checked out this resource and found it to be very useful in helping them manage the emotions that were coming up as a result of different challenges with relationships. There's also some resources with finances, academics, career plan, as well as involvement. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out this resource, to check this out today. It's a great tool that can be used and can be very a great resource for you to be able to access more of these self-care tips that Jessica has shared with you, as well as be able to refer students within your organizations and outside of organizations to this resource for students, which is free. Next slide, please. And so first you'll log into u.fullerton.edu, and that's essentially how you would start the process of getting connected to you. And at which point you have the option of creating a profile, which is a very short process. And within that, you'll be able to customize your user experience to be able to meet the needs of your own health, mental health, as well as career and academic needs. Next slide, please. All right, and so the homepage will feature different articles, also checklists, self-checks. You have an option of creating some goals to be able to have some accountability, and it will customize to the user according to what articles and resources you find useful. In addition, you can explore by category. So perhaps I am wanting to explore how to navigate stress or how to manage anxiety, then I can plug that into the explore by category option within the website, and I can find some articles and videos that can provide me with some resources and support. Next slide, please.
This has a video. Let me see if I can make it play. It's just a video of that screen. No. Oh, there we go. So this is the homepage.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I didn't want it to skip forward.
And you can log into this through your laptop, desktop, or phone, your cell phone.
So these are just a few examples of articles that you may see on You at Fullerton. And the various topics.
So we have internship, career path, personality styles, diversity and identity, finances, basic needs. Earlier, we saw some suicidal factors as well. And as a reminder, we do have crisis support for students for safety concerns 24/7. Thank you, Jessica. And then here we have our goal setting. I mentioned earlier that you have the option of setting some goals. This can be very helpful if you are wanting to establish some goals as a leader to be able to manage some of those self-care tools and strategies proactively, as Jessica mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. And then for this, there's also options to be able to look at, for example, bouncing back from a setback and establish some specific goals to assist with that. And looking at how you can establish the completion of those specific goals within a goal. Thank you. Next slide, please. And the reality checks are also an option. As you can see on this slide, we have the Succeed reality check, Thrive reality check, and Matter reality check. So the holistic approach that's used by you is really looking at success, thriving, and mattering. And this is looking at reality checks for different items such as sleep, loneliness and depression, sexual health, fitness and nutrition. So a couple different factors here and options for students. Next slide, thank you. And so we wanted to also include a tangible tool that we are hoping you find useful when you may be experiencing some anxiety, some stress, and need a coping mechanism to be able to manage those emotions. And so I invite you to next engage with me in this grounding 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 activity. And before we start with this, I'm wondering, I'm very curious to know if anyone here has done this activity, grounding, or heard of grounding, or done 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you can drop in the chat, yes, awesome. Looks like we have a couple of yeses, wonderful. Same here, awesome. And what were your thoughts? What are your thoughts in regards to this activity for those that have heard of the activity just before we get started? One person put super helpful. One person put I've heard of it. Okay. Very, very helpful. Another person wrote awesome, awesome. So whether or not you've heard of it and you engaged in it, thank you so much for sharing. We're going to go into a little bit more of what this looks like and how you can use it. And I'd love to share with you how I use it specifically. So oftentimes anxiety and stress can come from worries about the future or feeling anxious about what's to come and the unknown. And so what can be very helpful is to get grounded. And essentially what grounding is to identify some methods to get into the present moment. So oftentimes I mentioned anxiety can come from worrying about the future, what's to come in the future, feeling possible anxiety and feeling nervous about what's to come in the future. So the more we can develop tools and skills to get into the present moment, the more we can help manage those emotions and help be able to get centered and into the present moment. And grounding is one method to be able to get into the present moment. There's other methods such as meditation, and we do have a drop-in group next semester for guided meditation, which is super useful for students and for individuals. This is one method that can be extremely useful. As busy leaders and students, I invite you to utilize this. So we're going to do this together. I invite you to do this. Here it says it's a grounding technique that helps you to breathe, refocus, and reconnect to the present. It can be helped in times when you're feeling anxious, stressed, in a fog, or even just off your game. So I use this, actually, when I was thinking about this presentation last week, I used this in the present moment during a run that I had in the morning. And I'll explain to you how that works in a bit. So the idea is to get into the present moment and use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the first 5 is to find 5 things that you see in the room around you. So go ahead and find 5 things that you see in the room around you. And right now I see, I have some rocks right here, really pretty rocks I see here. And feel free to drop into the chat what you see around you. 5 things that you see it could be, you could see me and Jessica, you see this PowerPoint, you see the wall, you see a lamp. Write a couple of things that you see around you within the chat, please. And as you do that, I want to also mention to you that when I was doing this, when I did that walk that I mentioned last week, I did engage in this. So I saw a tree, I saw some concrete, I saw some dirt, and I thought about 5 different things that I could see. And then the next is think of 4 things you can feel in the present moment. And so some of those things can be like with the rock, I can feel the smoothness of the rock. I can feel the chair, which feels very smooth. Also your fingertips, there's so much power in feeling the fingertips as well. That can really help us get centered and grounded. And then the next 3 is to listen to 3 sounds that you can hear, such as computer, outdoors, whatever you might hear. And then the second to last is pick 2 things you can smell. So perhaps you might have some scented lotion, such as I have some vanilla lotion right near me, which I love. It smells delicious. Perhaps you have some coffee from the morning, some water, 2 things you can smell. And then the last is describe 1 good quality about yourself, such as your work ethic or how you've improved on your study habits. So the next time you might be feeling some anxiety or feeling like you need to get into the present moment, I encourage you to utilize this exercise. It's very useful. And when I utilized this, as I mentioned, as I went for my walk, I thought about this presentation, and I have a mantra that I also developed for myself, which is very useful. And my mantra is, my mind is full and I feel some nervousness and anxiety. I'm imagining putting that nervousness and anxiety into a basket and allowing it to float down the river in a calm fashion. And I am determined to get into the present moment. And then I refocused and thought about these specific grounding techniques. So a couple of different options for you to use. I encourage you to check out u.fullerton.edu, as well as utilize this grounding technique. when you may need to get into the present moment. And proactively, as Jessica mentioned, the more we can utilize these skills proactively, the better we can be at when we need to manage times where there's some reactivity that may be involved with our self-care needs. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. And so imagine if you all were starting a meeting and it's a 50-minute meeting, just taking 2 minutes to log into you and find a guided meditation, or doing this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as a group together. That would really set the tone of self-care. And what it would do too is help everybody feel nice and calm before we get started on the meeting. I've been in on a few meetings where people have said, okay, you know what? It's a stressful time. Let's just take a few deep breaths together real quick. And that really helps set the tone. So thanks, Jacqueline, for walking us through this. That's a really good example of how students can use this for their personal lives or within their leadership. So how to reach us, check out our Instagram. I know that Jacqueline dropped that into the chat earlier. So please follow us so we can provide you resources about our upcoming groups, as well as just information about mental health and well-being. Our phone number is 657-278-3040. That is our only phone number. So all calls go into there. And that crisis support is available 24 hours a day. So you can call that phone number and ask to speak with a crisis counselor immediately. If you are in urgent need of speaking with a therapist. All services we're planning to resume them in person on 8/23. If you already have a counselor, just follow what they say. Some counselors' offices, like I said, we've moved, so some offices are ready and others are not ready yet. So those sessions may be happening over Zoom for the next few weeks until school gets started. Appointments are scheduled via phone call, not via your student health portal. So just know that. Check out our website as well. I think Jacqueline already dropped that into the chat. I have a survey. So if you would use our Qualtrics survey, that would be really helpful. Getting feedback from students is really important to my work. So that way I can design presentations that are helpful. If there's aspects that you liked, let me know. If there's aspects of aspects of the presentation that you didn't like, please also let me know about that, because I want to make sure that I'm providing relevant and helpful information. These presentations are for you, not for me. So any feedback is definitely great. And then I'm going to pass this off to, I think Leanne said that she had some information to give you as well. So I'll stop my share and I'll drop this Qualtrics link into the chat.
Thank you so much, Jessica and Jacqueline. That was so helpful. I took a lot of notes, and I think one of the things that I walked away with was wellness is contagious, and that, if you're burning yourself out for the sake of your organization, other people might not want to join or take on leadership positions. And so the more you can take care of yourself, the better off you are and the better off your organization is. And as we go into this upcoming academic year, student leaders have the opportunity to really set the tone and, manage their group and create boundaries and set those expectations. And so I do have, we're going to continue these conversations, I think, building off today's conversation. Tomorrow we have a session about leading your student organization. We're going to talk about what it means to be a leader, navigating conflict. And then next week we have a session about creating and managing expectations. And maybe we'll, included in that is creating a culture of wellness and, avoiding burnout. And then we'll continue talking next week about the issues of society. We are still in a pandemic. There's a lot of social justice issues. And so how do we, focus our student organization and highlight these social justice issues as they relate to the mission and purpose of your group? And then we have a panel with past Tuffy Award nominees They will be talking about recruitment, engagement, and retention. So be sure to check out the other sessions. We're going to record them as well. As you might have seen in the chat, we have 2 surveys today. So make sure you complete the survey from CAPS. And then also we have a survey for you to get credit for today's session. I have not yet shared that link, so give me a minute. We have, let's see. As you may know, re-registration is a 3-step process. So the first step is the re-registration form. Some of you have already done that. Make sure your incoming president gets that form approved in TitanLink. The second step is making sure the president and treasurer meet the officer qualifications, including the online training in Canvas. So that is the second step. And then the third step is making sure you participate in at least 1 LeadCon session. Many of you are here today for that exactly. I have a survey to get you all credit. And then if you have questions about the re-registration process, we have re-registration clinics every Thursday at 10:30. So if you have questions about the status of your group, or have got your form denied and want to ask why, or want to walk through the registration process, we'll have staff members available in the virtual clinics to help you with all of that. We also have Discoverfest that's taking place next month on September 1st and 2nd. You may have heard that we are doing a hybrid Discoverfest. So day 1 will be in person, day 2 will be virtual. We've scaled back the in-person event a lot since the pre-pandemic Discoverfest. And so the first 80 student organizations who are fully registered and sign up will be guaranteed a table on day 1, but day 2 will be virtual, and anybody and everybody who is registered can participate in that session. So we have a webinar taking place 2 weeks from now to address all things Discoverfest. So be sure to check that out. We'll also record that and put it on our YouTube channel. And then I will drop the link in the chat box right now for you to get credit. So you have an hour from now to complete this survey. Be sure you complete it and find the organization that you're representing to get credit for today's session. I know some people have had questions, and so look at your organization's name in TitanLink, and that will help you identify which group you're representing. So, find your name in TitanLink. If your organization starts with A, then you go to my organization starts with A through G, find A, and then all the TitanLink groups that start with A will be here. If you are active Titan, select that, and then continue on answering those questions. And so if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. I'll stick around for a little bit. But other than that, thank you again to Jessica and Jacqueline for presenting today's session. We appreciate you sharing not just today's session on wellness, but all the other resources available through CAPS. I think there will be a lot of student organizations reaching out, and I like the staircase idea of start here and then build on additional resources and services as necessary. So yeah, thank you all. If you got your survey started and you don't have questions, feel free to head on out. I'll stick around in case anybody has needs or questions.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.